I was doing KSI Press, and I'm here with Jacinta Austin, who returns to action this week in an Eternal MMA 64. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, of course. I'm happy to be talking with you. Thank you for joining me during fight week. I really appreciate that. You're 4 days out. How are you feeling?
I feel good. I feel like with every camp, I get a little bit more social on fight week. Like it gets a little bit easier each time. Yeah, I feel really good. I just feel excited to get it done now. It's at that point where you just want to get in there.
Awesome, awesome. How was camp?
Amazing. I'd say it's the best camp I've had. It was 9 weeks, so it was long. I did a bit of traveling within that camp. I went to Thailand and trained for a little bit. So I had great partners. I trained with George Hickman over there for a little bit. And yeah, then I've come back and had the past 3 weeks here with my team. So it's been perfect.
Talk a little bit more about going to Thailand, because I mean, e- everyone seems to be going or wants to go out there and train because it's just so awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it was everything I thought it would be as far as the lifestyle, and everyone's so enthusiastic towards training, and you've got so many different partners that bring such diverse backgrounds into the room as well. So whether they're more of a wrestling background or Muay Thai, or everyone's got like a different set of skills to offer, which was really cool. My favorite part being that I had so many partners around my size, because that's like the real struggle, really. So it was awesome. All I did for 2 weeks was train and go to the beach and, get food. And yeah, it was awesome. I did most of my training at Bangtao Muay Thai. I just found like a small group to train with, and I like that sort of like smaller, intimate group. Anyway, I feel like I get a lot more out of it. So I had 2 weeks there and I smashed out a bazillion rounds. So I came back feeling really sharp and conditioned and fit, and yeah, now we're just sharpening up all the little last bits here in Sydney.
That's awesome to hear. Before we get to your fight, for everyone that doesn't know your story, how did you get into mixed martial arts?
Um, Honestly, it's not really even really a cool story. It's just like one of my friends were doing it years ago. And I've always been athletic and pretty good at whatever sport I do. So I just went along with him one day, and I just watched for a while because it looked like a bit much for me. Just watched for a few months, and then the coach that was running the kickboxing, who had noticed me hanging around for quite a long time, just sort of encouraged me to jump in, and it didn't really look back.
Awesome. So you went from kickboxing to mixed martial arts. What was I guess, why didn't you stick with kickboxing, and why did you want to jump to mixed martial arts?
So I've been sort of like all around the traps. I did start with kickboxing, then moved more to Muay Thai, then moved to boxing, and then last year moved to mixed martial arts. I think the biggest reason just being the Australian scene doesn't have much to offer as far as kickboxing and Muay Thai. There's not much career progression. There's very little opportunity, especially for females, to actually make a living off it. So MMA seemed like the natural course to take. I found an amazing MMA coach. I always wanted to try it, but I thought like, no, I'll pursue this kickboxing thing and see how far I can get with it. But once I realized I wasn't really getting the sort of traction that I wanted, despite winning, MMA seemed like the logical road to go down.
Gotcha. And then you turned pro last year, and you had a really great year. What was the decision to turn pro?
So I was supposed to like jump into MMA as an amateur, but because I've had so much fight experience, I couldn't find an amateur opponent, which I guess is fair. I'm trying to have my first amateur MMA fight when I've had something like 23 kickboxing, Muay Thai, and boxing fights. So I couldn't find any opponents, so we just jumped straight into pro.
Were you? I don't know. This might be a dumb question, but like, were you nervous to jump straight into pro by not having any amateur MMA fights, or were you just kind of, I know you've been kickboxing and boxing and Muay Thai your whole athletic career, so it was just not really anything to worry about?
So I did have one amateur MMA fight, but that was about 4 years ago now, versus the girl that I'm fighting this weekend. Um, so it's kind of a cool story, I guess. But no, it wasn't really too much of a big deal. I'd fought pro Muay Thai a few times by this point, so no, it felt like I should have been straight into the pros, no amateurs.
Gotcha. Well, you brought it up. You're fighting Alish Smith this weekend. You like you said, you fought her as an amateur. Now you're fighting her as a pro. What do you think of the matchup?
I'm very excited for it. I don't know. I didn't think I'd ever sort of get the chance to redeem that fight. When we fought was when I had done not a single day of grappling. I didn't even know what an underhook was. I didn't even know what a hip escape was. I was just a kickboxer, and I've been training MMA solidly for 2 years now, and I've got the 2 pro wins. I've done a ton of grappling comps to just test where I'm at versus the other girls around. So I'm very excited. I think this fight's going to go very, very differently.
Awesome. I guess what are the emotions going into this fight, because you do have a loss to her, whether it is an amateur loss, but like what are the emotions like going in, because you're going to try and get your revenge?
Well, I'm trying not to get too overwhelmed with the feelings of retribution and revenge. I'm trying to stay calm, but I am very excited because Alish is only one of 3 girls in every discipline I fought that's beaten me. So I'm very excited to redeem that loss and show what I can do with an actual MMA camp, with an actual MMA coach. And yeah, in the pro ranks as well, where all those things that weren't allowed before are allowed now, like knees to the head, elbows, all the fun stuff.
So going back to that loss, it was you lost your first amateur fight. What were the emotions like when that night when you lost? Like, were you maybe questioning, is this the right decision, or like what was going through your mind?
Well, at that point, 4 years ago, I was never thinking I was going to do MMA. It's not something I wanted or was trying to be the best at. I was actually over in New Zealand for a kickboxing tournament. Okay. And Alicia's opponent had pulled out last minute, and since I was there, I just did it. I just jumped in. The joys of tournaments and amateur fight nights. So I take all losses very seriously, but also I was never there to win. Really, it wasn't my fight to win. And then I had to fight a couple of hours after that, so I kind of just had to shake it off and let it go. Because I had a K1 championship fight 2 hours later, so I sort of just had to let it go. And I always looked back on it and thought how cool it would have been if the striker that had never done MMA had won. And I was forever disappointed that I wasn't that person on the day. But I wasn't there to be the winner of that fight, but I am this time.
And then last year, so did you make your pro boxing debut as well?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that's wild. So you won that. How was that?
That was so much fun. It was very different to Muay Thai and MMA and K1. It was a whole big spectacle, a whole big scene, the glamour and the lights and everything. It was a lot of fun, and I had an awesome opponent. And it's sharpened me up a lot. It's changed the way I fight a lot. So even though it was only 4 weeks prep, I'm really grateful for that fight. I learned a lot from it.
So going back to your fight this weekend, how do you see the fight going, and do you have a prediction?
All I know for sure is that whatever path I choose to take on the night, it's going to overwhelm her. I felt I felt my strength and my striking overwhelm her in the first fight. I just didn't know how to grapple, which is what let me down. So whatever I choose on the night, whether it be to stand and strike or whether I want to wrestle a bit more, either way, it's going to overwhelm her.
If she goes for a takedown this fight, do you think it's this it's she's going to be surprised?
Yeah, definitely. It's not going to be as it was last time. That's for sure.
Awesome, awesome. Finally, what do you want your 2022 to look like?
Well, I'm signed to Eternal now, so I have 3 fights with Eternal. So I'm hoping to get all of those done by the end of the year, and ideally win all of those 3. If there's any stalemates in between or things get a bit quiet, I'd love to do more pro boxing. It was so much fun. I'm in all the grappling comps that come up locally, whether it's jiu-jitsu or wrestling, just to improve my game. But yeah, ideally 3 to 4 pro fights this year, and ideally this is my last year on the Australian circuit.
Awesome. Yeah. You know, so say you get 3 fights this year, 4 fights this year. You fight out your eternal contract. Do you have a preference on where you want to go next? Do you want to go UFC, Bellator, ONE, PFL? Is there a preference?
I just want to get some good international experience. So wherever that is, whatever the next stepping stone is, it doesn't particularly bother me. I know what my end goal is. But yeah, just good, solid international experience. Because I know, especially with my Thailand trip, that the world outside of Australia is a little bit different as far as competition.
Awesome, awesome. And then but before we end this, there is a Dalmatian behind you, so I just wanted to give you a chance to show your cute Dalmatian.
Yeah. Oreo.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, especially during fight week. If you want to plug any of your social media, any sponsors you got, if you want to thank anybody, the floor is yours.
Yeah, just I guess follow the journey. My Instagram's Jacinta_Jade with 2 E's. And my gym is Karaoke_MMA Hornsby. All the updates go on there. So if you follow those 2, yeah, you won't miss anything.